Last time, I told you how my son sold the family home behind my back. I told you how I discovered the truth in cold legal papers that felt like a knife twisting inside me. I told you how the walls I had lived within for 50 years suddenly felt foreign, how the air itself seemed to whisper that I was no longer welcome. But if you think losing your home is painful, stay with me now. Because what came next cut deeper than wood or stone. What came next was my son's voice, the words he finally spoke to me, and they shattered something inside me that no one could repair. I woke the morning after my decision clear-headed for the first time in weeks. The weight of silence had crushed me long enough. I was his mother, not a stranger. He owed me the truth. When he shuffled into the kitchen that morning, his hair unkempt, eyes heavy with a night of poor sleep, I was already sitting at the table with the bills spread out before me. "Sit," I said firmly. He froze, his eyes darting to the papers. "Mom, Sit." My voice surprised even me. Strong, steady, like the woman I once was, the woman who had held this family together through hard years. He sat, his hands clenched into fists on the table. "I want the truth," I said. "No more lies, no more excuses. You sold this house. You made that choice. But why? Tell me everything." For a long moment he stared at the floor. Then, in a low voice, he said, "I was drowning. The debts, they were worse than you know." I leaned forward. "Then you should have come to me. You should have trusted me." He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "Trusted you? Mom, you wouldn't have understood. You cling to this house like it's the only thing that matters. But it's just a building. We needed money. I needed money. Just a building." The words hit me like a slap. My husband's laughter in the garden, the echo of my children's footsteps down the hall, the meals I cooked in that kitchen. Did all of that mean nothing? "You think I care about bricks and paint," I whispered. "This house is the story of our lives. And you traded it for money you'll spend and forget." He slammed his hands on the table. "I had no choice." I rose from my chair, trembling, but not from fear. "You always have a choice, always, and you chose to betray me." His face twisted, and for the first time, his anger cracked into something else, something raw, almost desperate. "You don't understand. If I hadn't sold it, they would have taken it anyway. The creditors, the banks, they were already circling. I thought I was protecting you." Protecting me. Those words stung. I didn't feel protected. I felt robbed. "Son," I said softly, "when your father and I bought this house, we promised each other it would always be a place for family. You've broken that promise. You've broken us." For the first time, his eyes filled with tears. He pressed his hands against his face, his voice muffled. I didn't know what else to do. I watched him, my heart aching with a pain only a mother can know. The ache of loving someone who has hurt you more than anyone else could. But before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. He jumped up, wiping his face quickly, forcing his features into calm. When he opened the door, another stranger stood there, folder in hand. "Good afternoon," the man said smoothly. "I'm here on behalf of the new owners. Just a routine check before they begin renovations." Renovations. That word echoed like a death sentence. They were already planning to change everything, to tear apart the rooms where my life had unfolded. I stepped forward, gripping the edge of the doorframe. "This is still my home," I said, my voice trembling. The man glanced at me kindly, almost pitying. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Not anymore." When he left, I turned back to my son. "Did you hear that? Do you understand what you've done? I'm not just losing walls. I'm losing the place where your father lived, where you grew up, where every memory I have lives. And you stood by and let it happen." He opened his mouth, but I raised my hand. "No, don't say another word. You've said enough." That night, I walked through the house slowly, room by room. I touched the walls, the curtains, the photographs on the shelves. I wanted to memorize everything before it was gone. My heart felt like it was being pulled apart piece by piece. In the hallway, I paused in front of a family photo, me, my husband, and our son, taken decades ago. We were smiling, arms wrapped around each other, full of hope. I traced my finger over that boy's face, and I wondered where he had gone. Because the man who stood in my kitchen was not him. Dear ones, I need to pause here. Tell me, what would you do if you were in my place? Could you forgive a betrayal like this, or would you walk away? Please share your thoughts in the comments. Your words mean more to me than you know. But don't go anywhere, because what happened next will shock you. The confrontation between me and my son reached a point I never imagined, and the truth he revealed shattered me even more than losing my home. Stay with me. You don't want to miss the next part. The days that followed were heavy with silence. My son and I lived under the same roof, but it felt as if we were on different planets. I cooked my meals in quiet, sat in the living room alone, and when I heard him moving around, I stayed out of his way. It wasn't anger that kept me distant, it was heartbreak. But grief has a way of turning into questions, and questions into anger. One night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Sit down," I said when he came in, dropping his keys on the counter. He hesitated, then sat across from me at the kitchen table, his eyes wary. "I need to understand something," I began. My voice shook, but I steadied it. "I gave you my whole life. I sacrificed for you. I worked 2 jobs so you could go to school. I went without new clothes, without vacations, without rest, so you could have everything. And this is what you give me back, selling my home behind my back." He opened his mouth, but I pressed on. "When you were a boy, you used to run to me when you were scared. You trusted me with everything. What happened to that boy? Where did he go?" For the first time, his face softened. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his voice low. "Mom, I didn't want to hurt you. I was scared too. I was drowning in debt. If I told you, you'd worry yourself sick. You'd blame yourself somehow. I thought, if I just fixed it, you wouldn't have to carry the burden." I stared at him, my chest tight. "Do you hear yourself? You didn't take away my burden. You became it." He flinched, his eyes dropping to the floor. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, he whispered, "I'm sorry." 2 words, small, almost fragile. But they didn't heal the wound. They were like a bandage placed over a deep, festering cut. I closed my eyes and shook my head. Sorry doesn't bring back my home. Sorry doesn't erase the betrayal. He pressed his palms against his face, his voice muffled. "I just wanted to protect you. Protect me." He kept saying those words, but all I felt was the opposite. The following Sunday, I went to church as I always had. I sat in the back pew, the stained glass light falling over me. But instead of peace, I felt an ache so sharp it stole my breath. When the pastor spoke about trust and forgiveness, I gripped the hymnal in my lap so tightly my knuckles turned white. After the service, a friend came up to me. She asked how I was doing. I opened my mouth to say fine, but the word wouldn't come. Tears filled my eyes, and before I knew it, I was telling her everything. The house, the sale, the betrayal. Her face was shocked, but gentle. "Oh, my dear," she whispered, placing a hand on mine. "You can't carry this alone." That night, I thought about her words. Maybe I had been trying too hard to carry it alone. Maybe I needed to tell my story, not just to her, but to anyone who would listen. Because silence was suffocating me. And so I began to write letters. Not to send, but to pour out what I couldn't say. Letters to my husband, telling him how lost I felt without him. Letters to my younger self, reminding her of her strength. And even letters to my son, words I couldn't yet say to his face. It didn't fix the pain, but it gave it shape. It made the emptiness a little less endless. But then, just as I began to find a small rhythm in my days, another knock came at the door. This time, it wasn't a stranger with papers. It was a woman, her expression apologetic. She was the realtor. She looked at me with pity in her eyes as she said, "Mrs. Allen, I'm so sorry. But the buyers want to move forward sooner than expected. You'll need to vacate within the next 30 days. 30 days. A lifetime of memories packed into 30 days. I felt the world tilt beneath me. My knees nearly gave out, and I gripped the door frame to steady myself. Behind me, my son appeared, his face pale. He started to speak, but I raised my hand. "Not now," I said, my voice trembling. "Not now." When she left, I turned to him. 30 days, I whispered. "Do you have any idea what that means to me? Every rose bush, every photo on these walls, every inch of this place is my life. And now I'm supposed to throw it into boxes and walk away." His face crumpled. "Mum, I didn't know it would be this fast." I laughed bitterly. "You didn't know, or you didn't care." He dropped his gaze, silent. That night, I walked through the house with a notebook, writing down every memory tied to each room. The corner of the living room where my son had taken his first steps. The kitchen table where my husband once carved a turkey too clumsily, sending us all into fits of laughter. The porch where I had watched countless sunsets, believing I would die with that view. Each note felt like a goodbye. And yet, I knew the hardest goodbye was still to come. Dear ones, I have to ask you, if this happened to you, what would you hold on to? Would you cling to the memories, or would you try to let go? Please tell me in the comments. I need to know how others would face this, because the truth is, my son wasn't finished. And the reason he gave me for why he did all this was something I never could have imagined. Stay with me. You don't want to miss what comes next. The 30 days became a shadow over me. Each sunrise reminded me that time was slipping through my fingers, that soon the walls I had polished, the floors I had scrubbed, the garden I had tended, would no longer be mine. Every creak of the house sounded like a countdown. I began to sort through closets and drawers, opening boxes I hadn't touched in decades. Old school projects from my children, brittle with age. My husband's work shirts, still carrying the faint smell of his cologne. Letters we exchanged when he worked long shifts at the factory. With every object I packed, a piece of me tore loose. One evening, as I folded another stack of memories into a cardboard box, my son walked in. He hesitated in the doorway, watching me. His face looked younger somehow, worn down by guilt. "Mom," he said softly. I didn't look up. "What?" "I didn't mean for it to get this bad. I thought I was helping." I set the box down and turned to him. "Helping? Do you see what you've done? You've turned me into a visitor in my own life." He flinched, but I pressed on. "Every photo I pack feels like a funeral. Every room I empty is another grave. And you stand there telling me you were helping." Tears welled in his eyes. "I made a mistake. A terrible mistake." I stared at him, my chest tight. "Then tell me the whole truth. Not just about the debts. Tell me everything. Because I know there's more you're hiding." He looked away, his jaw tight. "It doesn't matter now." "It matters to me," I said firmly. "I've lost everything else. At least give me the truth." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then he whispered, "It wasn't just the debts. I gambled, Mom. I lost money I didn't have. I thought I could win it back. I thought I could fix it before you ever knew." The word struck me like a physical blow. Gambling. My son, the boy I had raised with every ounce of discipline and love I could muster, had gambled away not just money, but my trust, my home, my peace. I sank into a chair, my hands trembling. All those lies, all those nights you said you were working late. It was gambling. He nodded, his face buried in his hands. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I closed my eyes, memories flashing. My husband warning our boy as a teenager never to play with cards and money, saying it was a dangerous road. My son had promised he'd never do it, and now here we were. When I opened my eyes, I saw not just a grown man, but the child I had once held, lost and broken. My heart ached, but my anger burned just as fiercely. "You didn't just lose money," I whispered. "You lost me." He looked up sharply, his eyes wide with fear. Don't say that. But I meant it. Something had broken between us, something I wasn't sure could ever be repaired. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered the house in darkness, touching the walls, the furniture, the photographs. Each one seemed to ask me the same question. How could your own son do this to you? The next morning, as I sat with a cup of coffee in the quiet kitchen, my son joined me. His voice was hoarse. I'll fix it, Mom. Somehow, I'll fix it. I shook my head. No, son. Some things can't be fixed. Some things can only be carried. He didn't reply. His silence told me he knew I was right. Later that day, another blow came. The new owners arrived with a contractor. They walked through the house, discussing changes, tearing down a wall here, repainting there, removing the porch where I had sat with my husband countless evenings. I followed them silently, each word like a knife. The contractor's voice was casual, detached. This wall isn't load-bearing, so it'll be easy to take down. We'll modernize the kitchen, maybe get rid of these old cabinets. Old cabinets. Those old cabinets had held my family's meals, my late husband's favorite mug, my children's school lunches. To them, it was just wood and hinges. To me, it was a lifetime. When they left, I stood in the empty hallway, my body shaking. I wanted to scream, to tear the papers apart, to undo it all. But all I could do was cry. And in that moment, I realized something even more painful than losing the house. I realized I could lose my son completely too. Dear ones, I need you now more than ever. If your child betrayed you like this, would you forgive them? Could you? Or would you walk away, even if it broke your heart? Please tell me in the comments. I am desperate to know if I am alone in this. But don't leave yet. Because what my son confessed next, the full truth of why he gambled, of why he sold my home, would shatter me even more than I thought possible. Stay with me. You need to hear what comes next. The house no longer felt like mine. Each day, as the new owners prepared their renovations, I felt more like a ghost drifting through the halls. My son kept his distance, speaking only when necessary, his eyes hollow. But I knew there was more, something still hidden. A mother always knows. One evening, as I packed dishes into a box, I turned to him. You told me you gambled. You told me you were drowning in debt, but that's not the whole truth, is it? He froze in the doorway, his face pale. Mom, please, let it go. I slammed a plate down on the counter, the sound shattering the silence. No, I've lost everything else. I will not lose the truth. Tell me what you haven't told me. For a long time he said nothing. Then he sat at the table, burying his face in his hands. His shoulders trembled. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. It wasn't just gambling, Mom. I borrowed money from people I shouldn't have. Dangerous people. The room spun. What do you mean? His eyes lifted to mine, red and desperate. Loan sharks. I thought I could pay them back after a few wins. But I didn't. And when I couldn't, they threatened me. They said they'd come after you too. Selling the house, it was the only way I knew to get them off our backs. I staggered back, gripping the edge of the counter. Loan sharks, threats. The betrayal I had felt suddenly twisted into something darker, heavier. Not only had he sold my home, he had dragged me into a world of danger without ever asking. All those nights, I whispered, all those lies. You weren't protecting me. You were protecting yourself. His lips trembled. I was trying to protect both of us. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. By destroying the one place I had left in this world, by taking the only thing that kept me connected to your father, to our past. He rose suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. You don't understand, Mom. They would have hurt us. They could have taken everything anyway. I had no choice. I looked at him, my heart breaking all over again. You always had a choice. You just didn't trust me enough to make it with me. For the first time, I saw him collapse, Not physically, but inside. His shoulders slumped, his eyes empty. He sank back into the chair and covered his face with his hands. "I'm sorry," he whispered over and over, like a prayer, like a curse. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room, staring at the walls, hearing every echo of the life we once lived there. I thought of my husband, of his steady hands, of his laughter that once filled this house. I thought of my son as a little boy, running barefoot across this very floor, his smile bright and innocent. And I thought of now, of betrayal, of fear, of strangers who would soon take a sledgehammer to these walls. The next morning, I walked out to the porch, my roses swaying gently in the breeze. I touched the petals, soft and fragile, and felt the weight of everything pressing down on me. This wasn't just about a home anymore. This was about survival, about a son lost to choices he should never have made, about a mother forced to carry pain she never asked for. And as I stood there, I knew something with terrifying clarity. The hardest part was still ahead, because leaving this house wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of the true reckoning between me and my son. Dear ones, this is where episode 2 ends. You've walked with me through betrayal, through lies, through the crushing truth of debts and danger. But don't go yet, because in the final episode, you will hear how it all ended. You will see what I did when the last day came. You will hear the choice I made, and the words I spoke to my son that he will never forget. Stay with me. The conclusion will break your heart, but you must hear it.